At the beginning of the movie, we see the Pacific Ocean, where a shipping container is floating in the water. The scene shifts to the character of our story, John, who is about 60 years old. He had brought this boat for fishing but goes to sleep for a while. Then he hears some water sounds. He checks around and finds out that his boat is filling with water. John goes up to check why this is happening. He understands that his boat has collided with a container, and this is the same container we saw at the beginning of the story. Now he has to immediately separate his boat. Otherwise, it will fill with water, and both he and his boat will drown. John first tries to push the boat away with a stick. He tries, but it doesn't work. So he brings a bag, goes to the container, and closes it to push it away so the boat is freed. However, due to a small collision, a part of his boat breaks, allowing water to enter inside. Now he has to fix it as soon as possible. First, he tries to turn on the water pump to remove the water, but due to water damage, all the electronic parts of the boat are broken, so it does not work. John calmly uses his mind and carefully examines his boat, guessing where the fault is. He takes out a toolbox and uses it to make a hand pump to remove the water from the boat. He is scared while doing all this and gets hungry, so he takes a break to eat and then resumes pumping out the water with the hand pump. Night falls, and with no place to sleep inside the boat, he makes a swing and spends a night on it. The next morning, his first priority is to close the hole caused by the container because water is continuously entering through it. He applies glue and patches the hole to stop some of the water from coming in. However, the hole is not fully closed, so he uses the hand pump again to remove the water and then continues working on sealing the hole. After some time, he successfully closes it completely. To check if it will work, he takes the boat a little deeper into the water. Now his next task is to send a message to someone to inform them he is stuck. For this, he needs the radio, which is damaged. Using his ingenuity, he removes the boat's battery, opens it, and connects it to the radio. With a map, he determines the location where there is better connectivity and attempts to send a message to everyone. Unfortunately, his idea does not work. Disheartened, he leaves the radio and goes downstairs. He picks up a book and starts reading it. This book, which came with the radio, explains how to use it to seek help in emergencies. While lying down, he suddenly hears some noises from above. He goes upstairs and tries to communicate using the radio, but bad luck strikes again, and the connection gets disconnected. Saddened, he goes back downstairs and drinks alcohol for a long time. John's fear is evident, a fear anyone would feel when stuck in such a place, unsure of survival. After this, he cooks food for himself. While cooking, some raindrops fall on his hand. He goes upstairs, enjoying the rain, and collects water from it. John returns downstairs, eats the food he cooked, and then reads a book before going to sleep at night. He knows very well that no one will come to save him anytime soon. He resolves to do something the next morning. Otherwise, he might remain stuck for many days. The next morning, when he opens his eyes, the first thing he does is go up to look around to see if there is any ship nearby, but he finds nothing. After this, he works on fixing his antenna cable. Once done, he notices a storm approaching from a distance. It is expected to reach him by evening, so he prepares in advance. First, he fills all the buckets and bottles on the boat to increase its weight and prevent it from overturning. Afterward, he shaves himself. Finally, he puts on his raincoat and lies down on the deck to manage the boat during the storm. As the storm hits, waves begin to rise, and the boat starts shaking violently. Now his boat sometimes goes down and sometimes comes up, but these waves were not breaking his courage. He gives his best and tries to handle it, but the waves keep getting bigger. At one point, he narrowly escapes falling into the sea. Then he gets an idea he should anchor the boat in one place. He immediately brings an anchor from below and starts lowering it into the water. However, a huge wave hits his boat from the front, causing both him and the boat to submerge in the water. Being a smart man, he does not let go of the boat's handle and uses it to straighten the boat again. He then goes down to finish the remaining work. First, he begins removing the water, as the boat is now filled with water up to the waist, making it extremely heavy. In this process, he suffers a head injury. Now, he is becoming completely unconscious and faints for some time. When he opens his eyes, there is a large cut on his head, and blood is coming out. Looking out of the window, he sees that the storm has not yet subsided. Despite his wounded condition, he knows he has to act. Realizing he cannot stay on the boat much longer, he decides to leave it. John quickly retrieves the lifeboat, but he ties it to the main boat so it doesn't drift away. He sits on the lifeboat, now his only refuge. In the next scene, when he opens his eyes, he sees his main boat a little farther away, sinking due to the water filling it. Watching his boat in such a condition makes John feel deeply upset, but he knows he is helpless. He pulls the boat closer to him one last time and enters it. Inside, the water has risen to his shoulders. He grabs a few belongings, a food can, water, a toolbox, and finally, his mother's hat. Before leaving, He remembers his injury and ventures further inside to find a first aid box. He takes it and returns to his small raft with all his items. Finally, he cuts the rope tying the raft to the boat, and before long, the boat sinks completely, disappearing from view. John becomes emotional, watching the boat go under, as he had many memories tied to it. Now, he has only the small raft, his new home, to rely on for survival. Days stretch ahead of him, but how many more can he endure like this? Floating in the open water, he is aware of the dangers nearby. Who knows if a shark might appear? John opens an instrument to check his location. Far away, he spots a shipping line on the map, a route where many ships pass every day. Marking the spot, he decides to move toward it. That night, another storm arrives. This time, he has only the small raft. Earlier, he had a large boat, which barely withstood the storm, but now he is left defenseless. A strong wave flips his raft, throwing him into the water. John unzips the raft to let the water out and climbs back onto it, closing his eyes and ears against the chaos. He lies on the raft with his head down, dejected and upset. He spends the entire night like this. When morning comes, the first thing John does is inflate his raft with a pump. By now, his drinking water has become dirty, and he is running out of fresh water. He searches for something to eat and finds food, but it has become completely salty from the seawater. Frustrated, he starts shouting in anger. His frustration is visible on his face, but shouting will not solve anything. John checks the map to see how far he is now. He discovers that the shipping line is still at a short distance. This gives him a glimmer of hope. However, another problem arises. He is exposed directly under the sky, with no shelter. To shield himself from the sun, he pours water over his body. But as time passes, the sun becomes stronger, making him feel even thirstier. He devises a solution. Using sunlight, he sets up a system to purify water. He cuts a large bottle and places it on top of a smaller one, with a glass underneath. The water begins to evaporate and condense into the cup below, giving him a small but drinkable amount of water. At least now, John has found a solution for his water problem. The fight for water was over, but now he had to arrange for food, which was a little easier than finding water because there was a store of fish around him. He makes a hook and puts it in the water, after which he looks at the map once again. Then, he notices a big cargo ship approaching from the distance. Seeing this, he becomes hopeful. He immediately lights a flare and starts making noise. As the ship gets closer, he begins shouting. However, the ship slowly passes by his side, and no one notices him. If he were on a larger boat, he might have been visible, but in his small raft, he is nothing compared to the massive ship. His hope fades despite coming so close to being rescued, and he feels disappointed once again. John sits there, dejected. During this time, he notices that a fish has been caught in his trap. Excited, he starts pulling it in. But by the time he reaches it, a shark appears, snatching away his catch and frightening him. His food is gone, leaving him completely upset. Later that night, another ship passes nearby. Once again, he lights a flare and tries to signal for help, but just like before, no one sees him. His hope of living diminishes further. John begins to feel that only big ships pass through this area, and they will never notice him. He starts believing he is destined to remain stuck here. The next morning, when he wakes up, he notices that the water purification system he had built is working. He drinks the fresh water first. After this, he checks his location device and realizes that he has drifted far beyond the shipping line. This means no more ships will pass through his route. Seeing this, all his hope is shattered. From this point, he gives up on the idea of survival. At the end, he writes down some heartfelt thoughts on paper. He apologizes for the mistakes he has made in his life. In the last line, he writes a few words for his family. He places the letter inside a jar and throws it into the water. Afterward, John lies down on his raft, waiting for death to come. The night passes in this hopeless wait. But perhaps fate had something else in store for him. He sees a faint ray of light in the distance, possibly from a ship. Unfortunately, John has no flare gun to signal it. Desperate, he burns all the papers he has to create a fire for signaling. The fire grows rapidly and becomes difficult to control. In no time, the entire raft starts burning. Now, John has no choice but to jump into the water to save himself. He dives straight into the ocean, aware that sharks might be nearby. Though scared, he decides to embrace his fate. Resigned, he closes his eyes and sinks deeper, preparing to die. But perhaps today is not the day written for his death. When he opens his eyes underwater, he sees a boat above, its light shining down into the water. He swims toward it with the last bit of strength he has, determined to survive. The people on the boat notice him after seeing the burning raft and rescue him. As they pull him aboard, John realizes something profound. Sometimes destruction brings unexpected benefits. This story teaches an important lesson. One should never give up too soon because who knows, something extraordinary might still be written in your fate. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.